This is a film study that tries to give a balanced look at how the Vikings were able to stop Jaxon Smith-Njigba from having much of an impact at all in Week 13. 2 catches on 4 targets, but perhaps most importantly for me, isn't just the how they did it, it's the why. Why Brian Flores and the Vikings defense felt a need to do so, to hedge to his side, to allocate a safety, to kind of cheat off of Sam Darnold's eyes in a couple of situations. I think I've got 13 or 14 plays queued up for you. Basically, my question that I went into this with in looking at the All-22 and End Zone Angle film was, what did the Vikings see in film study on the field to be able to adjust and adapt so well? And then, looking forward, can other defenses repeat this on a weekly basis? And if so, how come no one else have been able to put forth this type of effective strategy against Jaxon Smith-Njigba so far, leading the league in so many categories in receiving, responsible for, earlier in the season, I think he was responsible for like 46% of his team's total receiving yards. I think now it's down to like 43. Let's get to the film, and then I'll give you some summary evaluations at the end to try to encapsulate everything that we saw. This one kind of is emblematic, or a systematic representation, I should say, of one of the reasons why JSN was kind of closed off as an option. This is the first possession, and as someone who has watched the Ravens struggle with a Brian Flores defense years ago down in Miami, and then Jared Goff and the Lions battle his defenses in Minnesota the last couple of years, it kind of reminds me of like that meme or that gif of a guy like on a pirate ship that says, "Is this your first time?" Because to me, this is kind of what he does. So Eric Wilson played a spectacular game, in my opinion. This is the third time that I've seen him play at an incredibly high level. This is JSN on kind of like a deep curl. You can see Wilson is directly in the window, number one. This is a 2-man route from Seattle. So you've got Shaheed motioning across and basically running a wheel, and JSN kind of sitting down. Part and parcel of this, of the way that Minnesota was able to play, is the aggressiveness with which they took on blocks and attacked the quarterback. Here you see Metellus, kind of like their do-everything safety hybrid, who's attacking the blocker. And in this case, because it's a 2-man route, there's really no other options for Sam Darnold. Metellus is going to win against the running back, Kenneth Walker, and really disrupt everything, close off all options. There were only 2 built into the play. I'm not criticizing it, because the reality is on a lot of these max protection play action concepts in 2025, it's been extremely productive for Clint Kubiak, Sam Darnold, and others. Certainly, I get to pick the plays that I show, and others have at times said that I cherry pick them. I don't think that you could really describe it in that way when you watch a sequence of 6 or 8 or 10 coverage snaps against Seattle from Week 13. And what I'm talking about is similar to this concept here. It's a snag flat. So JSN is spot shadowed in yellow up to the top side of the screen. It's going to be JSN kind of sitting down on the snag concept in between that right hash and the top of the numbers, and then Kupp running the flat route to the field. Van Ginkel perfectly gets in the window. You watch 2 or 3 of these occur, and you think it could be chance. It just could be the coverage scheme that was called. But once you see 5 or 6 or 7 times where a linebacker or a strong safety is in the window to JSN, you feel like, okay, this cannot be chance. It's a really quick decision by Sam Darnold. I give him credit in that he wasn't necessarily forcing the football to JSN the way that a lot of quarterbacks do when they're, trying to access their number 1 receiver. In this case, it's totally closed off, once again, by a linebacker, Van Ginkel, one of the most versatile players in the league. I remember when he signed with Minnesota, I did a full-length film study of his game, or of his style and his execution and versatility from when he played in Miami. I'll try to link that up in the description here if you're interested. Even as a Seahawks fan, feel free to check it out. Basically, the things you see Van Ginkel doing now is what he was doing in Miami. The only difference is he's been turned up to like another level under Brian Flores. Same play from the end zone angle. Again, snag flat, quick game concept out of an empty formation. Kenneth Walker motioning across. And you can see, number 1, that Sam Darnold's getting rid of the ball really quickly. Number 2, even though it's very blurry, you got Van Ginkel directly in the window, able to react to a throw to JSN. Darnold got to the read immediately, such that when Kupp catches the ball, he's able to make a move because he got the ball so quickly. So credit Darnold, at least on this snap, that he was able to get the ball to the secondary portion of the read, in this case, Cooper Kupp. This is another one from the first possession. Unfortunately, another example, I should say, of Sam Darnold getting rid of the ball quickly. Unfortunately, if you ask me, if he holds the ball for a tick longer or throws it out in front, I think you got a great opportunity to get JSN the football on this kind of shallow end. I think this looks kind of two-read-ish by the Vikings. So what I'm talking about is inside leverage, inside linebacker. It's Blake Cashman. And then this corner to the top side is going to react to the out route by number 2, which in this case is Barner. Darnold making a quick read and deciding to get rid of the football. And two read is something whereby the safety and the corner are reading the number 2 receiver. In this case, the number 2 receiver is Barner. If 2 goes out, the corner takes him, and the safety works over the top to defend on a vertical by 1. In my opinion, since there's no pressure on Darnold here, this looks like a clear opportunity to get the ball to JSN. Show you the inside, the end zone angle here in a moment. But one thing I do want to point out, because I have to give credit to the way this guy played football in this game, is Eric Wilson. Again, just impresses me every time I get to see him on film or live, jamming up Cooper Kupp on the backside of this route, basically disrupting his route such that if Sam Darnold wanted to hold on to the football, let's call this read number 1, read number 2, and then come back here, Kupp has been disrupted and may not be in the exact spot that Darnold expects him to be. Ball actually hits the corner in the hands on this concept. I'll give you the end zone angle so you can see what I'm talking about as far as the window. Now, it's interesting to me. This is the linebacker Cashman who's lined up to the field. Ivan Pace is like their blitzer, number 0. They don't utilize him in pass drops a whole lot or in coverage. He's typically on the field to blitz or in run situations. They just get better work from Cashman and Wilson on a consistent basis. This is the safety that plays over the top if JSN was to run a vertical. He does not. He runs an in cut. You can see that if Darnold is able to hold on to the ball a little bit longer, but you have to give Cashman credit, man. Like, watch how classically trained he is. We used to call this ping pong eyes, meaning getting his eyes to the receiver and getting his eyes to the quarterback at the same time, which seems difficult given the depth that he's at. See his eyes flash back from the quarterback to the receiver multiple times. Trying to put himself in position to play the inside leverage of 2. There's a corner driving on the outcut by 2. Ball ends up in his hands. Seattle's fortunate. Didn't end up being an interception. Look, the reality is Brian Flores knows how to accomplish things early in a game to create doubt in a quarterback and an offensive play caller's mind late. Seattle and Mike Macdonald obviously recognized early that they were going to be able to absolutely dominate the Minnesota Vikings offense, so they didn't have to put themselves at risk. And if some or a large portion of this analysis here tends to focus on things the Vikings are doing, I think that's appropriate because, in my opinion, they didn't shut down JSN by just locking him up with a particular corner or Sam Darnold and JSN not being on the same page or JSN breaking off his routes. Basically, they played really fundamental, solid, and prepared level of defense that put Seattle's offense in disadvantageous positions, specifically in the pass game. Here's one of them. This is still from the first possession. This will be the last play of that drive, in fact. 3rd and 11. So when I say 1 and 3 overload, I'm talking about these 2 defensive tackles here. Flores loves doing this kind of stuff, basically whereby you've got these 2 defensive tackles in the A and the B gaps, almost kind of forcing the center to step that way so the guard can take the 3, and tackle and or tight end will step to the edge defender, which in this case is Van Ginkel. And what that does is creates an opportunity to blitz by 1, 2, 3, or maybe even all 4 of these players lined up on the right side of our screen. Charbonnet is going to take over Wilson in the A gap, and what that does is allows Grenard one-on-one against the tackle because it forces Charbonnet to help out here. Grenard knows he can try to win to the top side against Abe Lucas, and he does. In addition, Harrison Smith blitzing into the B gap. It's beautiful stuff. Really, to me, it's kind of Seahawks-esque. Finally, as far as this play goes, this just tells you about Eric Wilson. He had left Minnesota at one point in time and then went to Green Bay. I think injured a little bit for like a season and a half or something like that. But man, since he's shown back up in Minnesota, he's just playing like a dynamo. In the 3 games that I've seen him against the Ravens, Lions, and Seahawks, he's been possibly one of the best 3 or 4 players on the field when Minnesota's defense is out there. Just as an aside for this first possession, the way that they limited the Seahawks offense to being one-dimensional, first 4 run plays for Seattle on the first drive, 3 yards, 5 yards, 4 yards, and -1. If you can't tell by now, I don't really think that JSN played a poor football game. I just think he was shut out as far as opportunities total. This is a second possession. It's a 2nd and 9. Incomplete pass to Cooper Kupp, who's in the slot up top next to JSN as the outside receiver. This is very Seahawks-esque from a response standpoint in coverage. Walker's going to motion out into the flats. And Murphy, number 7, is going to perfectly get in the window. The Vikings are doing this from a mugged up or almost stick split 0 look. The giveaway here to possibly the quarter half or what I believe is cover 6 is that the topside corner, Rodgers, is sitting jammed up on JSN initially. And sure enough, that's how it works out. You've got the half side here and the quarter side here. I call this quarter half. A lot of video games and other people, call it cover 6. Basically, JSN's going to try to sit down over top of this corner, Rodgers, who's being held by the route from Kenneth Walker into the flats. Murphy does kind of jam Cooper Kupp a little bit and then hedge back out underneath of JSN. Watch Sam Darnold immediately look to that side, and then Murphy work his way underneath of the direct line of sight from Darnold to JSN. Even those two aren't straight lines. Hopefully I said that in a way that makes sense. So Darnold has got to get to, once again, the next read, and it's Cooper Kupp over the middle. It ends up being incomplete. They mixed in a lot of too high safety structure with some heavy pressure. Just very smart, aggressive, and intelligent defense that did what is the appropriate thing oftentimes when you face a weapon like JSN, and that's do everything you can do to force the quarterback and the offensive coordinator to get to their 2nd, 3rd, or maybe even 4th read on each individual play. Just credit to Flores and the defensive guys, the defensive players from Minnesota, that they were able to do that with so many different looks. Second possession, another 3rd and 9. Seattle actually got a first down here on a tight end sneak. I believe it was by Barner. So another 1 and 3 look. So 2 defensive tackles lined up, 1 in the A gap, 1 in the B gap, and then Van Ginkel, the edge defender, lined up to the left. Same overload principle to our right-hand side, illustrated by the 3 arrows. Difference is this time it's only 3 of them and not 4. Very unpredictable, much like Seattle, if you ask me. So Van Ginkel is going to drop out. Grenard, 58, is going to rush. I'm talking about the OLBs. Against Detroit, what these guys were oftentimes doing is both OLBs were dropping out and both inside linebackers were blitzing. Kind of or the opposite, both outside linebackers rushing, both inside linebackers dropping out. Here against Seattle, to kind of generalize a little bit, there seemed to be a mixture. 1 inside linebacker blitzing, 1 dropping out, meaning Cashman dropping out to match Walker. And you guessed it, the free rusher here is Wilson. On the previous iteration of this 1 and 3, with an overload to the other side, remember the running back Charbonnet stepped up to block Eric Wilson. Well, the running back in this case is Kenneth Walker. He shifted out to run a route, which is matched by Cashman. Wilson, totally free in the A-gap. This is the 3rd offense that I have seen him face in 2025 and absolutely terrorized from either being a blitzer up the middle, in coverage, or against the run. Second stop in a row against Seattle's offense. This one was a 3 and out. We're on to the 3rd possession here. It's a 3rd and 6. This is going to be complete to Barner. He gets a win against Eric Wilson. To the top side of our screen, Seattle utilized 3 stand-ups to one side, talking about Kupp, JSN, and Shaheed, and 1 tight end to the backside, which is Barner, often. I wonder if maybe that's one of the reasons why Minnesota was so prepared for being able to take JSN away. In any case, very fortunate to get time here. The left side of the offensive line, specifically Gray Zabel, is kind of collapsed in, and then Walker does a really nice job of picking up Cashman on the blitz. Talking about Walker stepping up here to deal with Cashman. Watch how Minnesota is responding to JSN. Going in motion and then running some type of vertical. Now, I only have so much screen to deal with down here to the bottom, but watch this safety's eyes, Harrison Smith, as JSN starts to break on the out. He is totally committed to his angle. It's a daring method of trying to take away the number one receiver. Basically, Smith is IDing the route and then breaking where the ball, quote, should be. I think Darnold does a great job here of coming off of this read. Maybe he sees this, or maybe he just sees the tight coverage. The corner has the benefit of knowing he's got safety help over the top, so he can possibly be a little bit heavier or a little bit more physical. Basically, this defense did not show up to lose. The problem that Minnesota runs into is that Seattle's defense was just that much better. Darnold works all the way back to the other side. You can see he's to the downside of our screen here, his left-hand side. You also have Shaheed, who will pretty much be taken over by the middle of the field free safety. So closes off option 2 or maybe 3 if you want to include Kupp in the flats. And then comes back to the backside. Barner beats Wilson over the middle. I'll give the end zone angle so you can see the location. The location of the throw by Sam Darnold puts it low, away from Eric Wilson, such that he can't make a play at all. Smith is the guy that I spot shadowed a moment ago from the all-22 angle. Basically, he's totally focused on JSN. They're basically pushing the safeties to their right, our left-hand side. So Harrison Smith is going to go, off screen here for us to help out with JSN. And Metellus is going to move over to help deal with the vertical from Shaheed. JSN motions across. They switch the coverage, or they switch the defenders, that are responsible for each guy. Zabel really gets knocked back here by the defensive tackle. This happened at least twice on the film that I had. Shaheed's route gets taken over by the safety, Metellus, whose feet you can kind of see there at the top center portion of your screen. And then Barner is going to change directions. Darnold sidesteps out of that pressure from Gray Zabel kind of getting walked back into his lap. Darnold's able to make a great play. Perhaps gets his hand hit, and maybe that's what causes the throw to be low. Credit him for finding it. It was finding Barner over the middle. Finding the one-on-one, I should say, is very tough sledding for Seattle's offense early. This is the same quality of Minnesota Vikings defense that I saw them show up to in Detroit and shut down the run game for large stretches and give themselves, an upset win on the road against the Lions. Same possession, the third, and it's a 2nd and 4. This is going to be Turner's sack against the left tackle. You're going to get pressure here from the defensive tackle against Zabel, and then a win by Turner. JSN is off screen to our right. It's kind of like a quarter, half to his side. The corner matches his vertical route. It doesn't necessarily matter in the context of what we're seeing. The corner's playing off coverage, so you would expect him to be able to handle a vertical. Again, you see this dynamic of dropping one of the OLBs, Van Ginkel, and rushing the other. So a 4-man rush scheme. Van Ginkel has jammed up. I think that's Arroyo in the middle. Darnold initially looked to his left, which is where JSN is located, comes back to the middle. Because of the jam, that it was so physical by Van Ginkel, Arroyo is not in position to make himself available at all. Darnold kind of gets flushed out of there because of the pressure up the middle, and then Turner finishes it off. You get a forced fumble. Fortunately, Kupp is able to go get it. Seattle was able to convert a 3rd and long and eventually take a 3-0 lead. Here is the aforementioned 3rd and long. I think you start to see the gravity of JSN on display here, number one. Number two, the reactions that Minnesota consistently used to try to get people underneath of the throwing windows to JSN. So it's essentially a double slant concept. JSN running the initial slant, and then I think this is Cody White on the in cut. Watch what this outside linebacker Dallas Turner does to basically get in the window underneath of any potential throw to JSN from Sam Darnold. Quick release by Darnold. As he's releasing the football, look at the direct line of sight from Darnold to JSN and how Dallas Turner is in the middle of it. So Darnold correctly gets the ball to Cody White as the outside slant. And then he powers through one tackle. This is the way that Seattle has finished on offense, finished multiple plays since dating back to week 1, which is tremendous push and effort from multiple guys to try to get as many extra yards as possible. I think it's also a credit to Sam Darnold in that he was willing to throw the football wherever the read dictated. I don't know if JSN is or was frustrated at all, but what I do know is Seattle was willing, Darnold specifically, was willing to take whatever route, whatever receiver showed up as available on each individual play. Same play from the end zone angle. Again, Turner's going to drop out. And one more time, you have Wilson on an A-gap blitz. He gets stung by Charbonnet, and that's what gives Darnold the opportunity to get this football off as quickly as need be. There's JSN. Prior to him showing up on this part of the screen, Dallas Turner would have been in the window for Darnold to try to deliver. Sometimes when a player looks open, whether it's all 22 angle or end zone or even a screenshot, which I hate, he's actually wasn't open at the time. In this case, man, as much as pedestrian as Darnold's numbers were, and they certainly were on this day, he got sacked 4 times. He fumbled twice. I think 5 or maybe 6 quarterback hits. Minnesota brought pressure from 100 different locations. Not 100, but for the purposes of understanding, I'm trying to illustrate that I think it's entirely confusing for some guys to play against this defense. The interesting thing is, Darnold, of course, played in Minnesota last year. In any case, this was a huge play in the context of the game because they converted that 3rd and long and go down and take a 3-0 lead. Still in that 3rd possession, this is prior to the initial field goal from Seattle. And it's an interesting zone concept here, if you ask me, by the Vikings. Again, you've got a 3-by-1 formation where you've got 3 stand-ups. One of them happens to be a tight end. I think it's Arroyo. And then Barner set up as the tight end to the backside. The reason why I bring this up is the second safety basically is able to focus entirely on that side of the field. You got 3 receivers over there, 3 eligibles, 3 stand-ups, in fact. 1 tight end on the backside. Now, he stays into pass pro. Unfortunately, he's up against Van Ginkel, who just puts on a nasty spin move back to the inside to finish off the sack and force Seattle to settle for a field goal. Let's talk about JSN for a moment and where his route has taken him. Kind of a switch release from Arroyo and JSN in terms of where they're lining up. So Kupp is the number 1, Arroyo is number 2 from the sideline in, and then JSN will be number 3. Watch the release of JSN and Arroyo trying to switch it. I believe Arroyo is just trying to pick or jam or prevent the inside linebacker from dealing with this route from JSN. I think that's what Darnold is looking for. Maybe it's because of this safety here, Metellus, orienting himself to look to that side. It's a good decision to not throw the football, in my opinion. Very small window, if any at all, between Harrison Smith and Eric Wilson. Another example, like I said, of them kind of pushing the safeties to JSN side. Now, it also overlaps with that being the 3 receiver side with 1 tight end on the backside. This is the same play from the end zone angle. Like I said, Van Ginkel obviously finishes off with a sack. You got a mug look, but this is a more typical mug look in that it's only 6 on the line of scrimmage. They're going to drop out both inside linebackers, Cashman and Eric Wilson. Eric Wilson gets significant depth here. He's the guy that Arroyo, I believe, might be trying to pick. One thing confusing for me here is Sam Darnold in his read initially looked to his left, our right on the screen, where the 3 receivers were, one of which is Arroyo. He's looking over here. There's nothing over there. There's no receiver back over to his right-hand side where he's looking right now. Let me see if I can find the exact spot. Yeah, so here he's looking at the 3 receiver side and then comes back and looks over here. I've kind of tried to find the exact spot. I marked it as 662 on my timeline. There's no eligible receiver over there, so I'm not sure what he's doing unless he's trying to move defenders for some reason. It didn't work out because Van Ginkel finishes off sack. I know it took a long time to get there, talking about Seattle getting a 3-0 lead. It was a struggle I'm sure for you as a Seahawks fan, it was a struggle to watch. Even the All-22 film was like, man, they haven't scored yet. We're into the fifth possession, late second quarter. It's a 2nd and 1. This one's going to be incomplete to JSN. Perhaps he's a little frustrated at times, but man, you do have to give Minnesota credit. I think it's basically a trail technique by Murphy with this safety, Metellus, over the top. So you got Cooper Kupp kind of like on this out route, and then JSN sitting his route down near the bottom of the numbers. Possibly a landmark on this route. We're talking about right here. Murphy, watch the way he orients here. He's not trying to keep up with JSN. He's just trying to stay almost underneath and on the inside hip because he knows he has this kind of help over the top. Ends up being an incomplete pass thrown to the outside shoulder. One thing I'd like to point out here, how aggressive the safeties were in tracking Sam Darnold's eyes. So you have Shaheed here on the backside, who is a legit deep threat in the NFL, right? Watch Harrison Smith, and this showed up at least 3 times in the film that I noticed. As soon as Darnold starts looking over here, watch Smith just track his eyes and start to move in that direction. For me, the rudimentary knowledge that I have about football at this level, I'm looking at opportunities. If the defense wasn't so dominating for Seattle on this day, I'm looking at opportunities to look over here for Sam Darnold and then try to shoot Shaheed up the seam to make Harrison Smith defend him from a vertical standpoint, which I don't necessarily think he could do anyway. If Shaheed's getting a free release and you can find the time, the actual protection and space for Sam Darnold looks like opportunities for me to try to get a play. Seattle did gain another set of downs late in the second quarter. We've now got to a 3rd and 3. I think there's about 20 seconds left in the half when the ball is snapped here. So a stick split 0 look, and I'm going to show what happens here, but there's mug looks, and then there's stick split 0, and then there's the Brian Flores version of it. So I'm going to try to explain from the end zone angle parts of the third piece there that I mentioned, which is the Brian Flores version of it. So JSN, little stop route on a 3rd and 3. My guess is they probably have timeouts remaining. I don't know that at this point, to be honest with you. And JSN's just running a stop route trying to get the first down. Harrison Smith on the edge blitz. These guys are so well trained at knocking passes down off the edge, which is what occurs here. I do want to point out one more time, the DBs in stick split 0, especially for the Vikings, but for other teams, are oftentimes just looking at the quarterback immediately and reacting to his eyes, reacting to where he looks. Why? Because there's going to be so much pressure. There's no way for the quarterback to get to a second or, God forbid, even a third read. So we're going to talk about this DB here. And I'll scrub this back and then slow forward a little bit so you can see, try to look at Darnold. As soon as Darnold opens to the bottom side of our screen or Sam Darnold's right, look at that DB, immediately drive and looking for anything underneath here like a slant. Don't know how high or low percent that is for people that have played in the NFL or maybe have more knowledge than I do. In my opinion, this was a very aggressive defense, one that was prepared and one that said, we're going to try to take away his Sam Darnold's first read. It's a great play by Harrison Smith. I think Myers maybe it's a 54-yarder or 56-yarder that puts Seattle up 13-0. I want to talk about the stick split 0 and the Flores version of it. Now, this particular version, or this particular snap, I should say, all of these guys are rushing. Okay, all of these guys are blitzing and attacking. That's what overloads the pass pro. In fact, you kind of have 2 free rushers here, Dallas Turner and Harrison Smith, because the running back, Kenneth Walker III, goes to deal with Eric Wilson, and so does the right tackle, Lucas. But what I'd like to try to describe to you, if you've never heard me talk about it, is what I believe, what I know, but I've never heard anyone confirm for me, what Flores' defense is oftentimes reading when they're in these stick split 0 alignments. So for the purposes of this examination, we'll talk about this defensive tackle here and Eric Wilson. We've kind of got the flagpole in our way for the right upright. What it involves is reading the inside blocker to your side. So if the inside blocker to your side steps to you, then you step to him and peel out. Now let's just focus on Wilson here for a moment. That's not what happens here. Bradford steps down to deal with Blake Cashman. So that's a blitz read. If Bradford was to step to Eric Wilson and they're playing the read version of this, then 55 would drop out because it's mission accomplished for him. The idea would be if the right guard is stepping to you, Eric Wilson, then the center should be stepping to Cashman, who would execute the same thing. He would peel out. Again, the idea here would be if you're this defensive tackle, which is why I mentioned him first, let me get all this off the screen, this defensive tackle, and you're reading the center, under the scenario I just described, Bradford stepping to Wilson, center stepping to Cashman, then what read would that be for this defensive tackle? That's a blitz read. That's a go read. And so that's why when Flores runs this stuff, not on this particular snap, again, this is just an all-out blitz. Take away the first read, force him to get rid of the football. But that's why so many different iterations of the sticks blitz, zero blitz in a Flores structure, whether it's his time in Miami or whether it's his time now in Minnesota, which who knows, could be coming to an end after the season. That's why so many of these things look so drastically different, because they're not predetermined. It's reliant upon the blocking scheme that is exhibited, and usually the edge defenders or safeties on the outside do not have that read. They are normally go, and it's the inside rushers that are trying to, if you will, read and react, but in an aggressive manner. Hopefully I explained that in a way that makes sense. If you didn't like the explanation or the examination, the in-depth examination of that, please let me know in the comment section. The reason why I feel confident in it is because 2021, like week 10 or 11, Lamar Jackson and the Ravens go down to Miami, and Flores ran that thing like 38 or 40 times on the night. And by Tuesday of that week, I was like, okay, I think I get it. I understand why certain players are dropping out and certain players are rushing. And in case we move to the third quarter here, Seattle's up 16-0 at this point. They got the field goal at the end of the half to put them up 13-0. JSN not really competitive on this route to me. This is the only time, the only play here in this game where I feel like you saw any dialing back of his effort level and any possible way that someone could describe him as being, frustrated by the tactics that Minnesota was showing. It's an illegal contact downfield. Murphy is riding him, totally out of bounds. This to me is, I think this is his third target at this point. This is not a safety help situation. It's not like this safety is rolling over the top and giving that corner help. This is just Murphy being, really physical. JSN's release, in my opinion, not being one that's of the same quality as what we've seen, for much of the season. Sam Darnold throwing it up anyway. This was not the play that was a free play. That was actually 2 or 3 snaps earlier. Basically ended up being a throwaway. I think the Vikings were ready for so many of JSN's alignments. I don't know what they had from a game plan standpoint, obviously, to be able to put them in such a prepared situation. This is the same drive, the 7th possession in the third quarter. 1st and 5 after an offsides penalty on Minnesota. It'll be JSN's first catch of the day. I think it's a quarter, half. And the 2, or cover 6. The 2 side is to JSN side. So you got Rodgers in the flats, safety over the top, and then inside linebacker is inside out leverage. Once again, it's Eric Wilson. And so initially, Rodgers is being physical with JSN, and Rodgers is going to kind of fall off to this corner route, this flag, if you will, from Cooper Kupp. It basically attracts his attention. Rodgers did not have a good game tackling at all, but he's had a spectacular 2025. Blocking kicks, scoring 2 defensive touchdowns against the Bengals. Darnold actually pump fakes here. He's almost thinking about getting this ball to Kupp, but brings it back and takes the 5 or 6 yard gain to JSN underneath. I don't know, and I'm not going to speculate how much of this other teams will be able to recreate. In my opinion, Minnesota under Brian Flores on a defensive standpoint, they have a very unique structure, number one. Number two, I think they prepare differently than so many other people across the league. I think they do it from an old school standpoint. Basically, we're going to try to take away your most dangerous weapon, and in this case, it was JSN. Part of that is also that Seattle was unable to run the ball on Minnesota's defense for the day. 32 carries, 125 yards. Some of that is, during more conservative play calling offensively in the fourth quarter. The game is already over at this point. This will actually be the last play that I show you. But, when you can't run the ball consistently, not for big chunk plays, can't utilize play action because of the pressure, you get a whole lot of this, kind of this labored passing game, facing the stick split zero. Sometimes it's a Brian Flores version. Sometimes it's just everybody go. In this case, Wilson is dropping out. He was everywhere. In this case, he's getting, once again, into the window of JSN trying to run underneath. and Sam Darnold throws it to Shaheed. I thought this was a catch, to be honest with you. They ruled it incomplete. I guess the ball hit the ground. Even watching it from the end zone angle, which I'm not necessarily going to show here, I thought that it was an opportunity for Shaheed to make the play. And in my opinion, I thought he did catch it, but in any case, if the ball hits the ground, sometimes it depends on which team it is in terms of whether they rule it incomplete or not. I'll give you some of my summary thoughts, which I think I handed out a little bit at a time throughout the course of the video. If you feel like I was being too complimentary towards Minnesota's defense because they have a losing record, feel free to let me know in the comments section. I saw a lot of film of theirs in 2024, so perhaps my elevated opinion of the Flores defensive structure is based upon that. I don't think JSN was shut down so much as just not given opportunities. 2 catches on 4 targets. It's just not so simple, in my mind at least, as one elite corner locking someone up. In this case, Murphy versus JSN or Rodgers versus JSN at times. Generally, it's rarely that simple or easy to analyze at the NFL level. That's why the All-22 and end zone angle film is so important to me. I try to do reaction videos, but I hold off or reserve final judgment until I can get a look at the film. The Vikings did a number of things right. Proper alignment. They definitely created confusion along the offensive line, and they attacked the court. They attacked where they thought Darnold would be dropping. Maybe you could move the pocket a little bit more. Maybe some somewhat anomalous plays, reverses, jet sweeps. I don't know, but Minnesota had incredibly high awareness with respect to JSN's location and then the route that might emanate from it. I think he's got 44 or 43% of Seattle's receiving yards in 2025 at this point. That's close. It might not be, exact. I think that's the 3rd highest share of receiving yards for any NFL team in the last 25 years. So is this a wake-up call to that structure or that system? Or a warning sign, right, that other teams are going to be able to do this consistently? There's a couple of factors here for me that make it a hard no, the answer to both of those questions. Horton's absence is an issue. He's a big play guy. He had 6 touchdowns before going out. I don't think he played starting 3 or 4 weeks ago. Shaheed could help with that. In this game specifically, I tried to diagram one perhaps rudimentary idea for attacking the way that Minnesota safeties were orienting themselves to Sam Darnold's eyes. In my opinion, Flores and his DB coaches teach that. In some of their coverages, they do not. And it's your job as an offensive coordinator and quarterback to catch them. Because of how dominant the McDonald and Durday defense was, you didn't need JSN to produce 8 or 10 or even 6 catches. So far in 2025, he had one other game with 4 receptions. That was the 23-20 win over the Cardinals in late September. But, of course, JSN had the huge catch later in that game to put him in field goal range for the final touchdown. He had 5 catches in the return bout against Arizona that Seattle won 44-22 almost a month ago. The fact is, JSN's played like an MVP candidate. It shouldn't surprise us that a team comes in with maybe you can call it a weighted game plan to stop him or slow him down. And it also further shouldn't surprise us that it was a Brian Flores defense. Flores approaches things from a matchup standpoint, and it's a remarkably unique defense. When things are going well, they're playing incredibly fast, stopping the run on 1st and 2nd down, and then putting you in those stick split zero / mug looks that the Seahawks major in themselves. The Vikings have done this to the 3 teams that I saw, the Ravens, Lions, and Seahawks. Here's the quarterback numbers for those 3 games. Goff will kind of stick out a little bit. Lamar Jackson, he was 17 of 29 passing for only 176 yards against the Vikings. 1 touchdown. He was sacked 1 time. Now, Goff put up more yards. He was 25 of 37. It took 37 passes for him to get to 284 yards. He did have 2 touchdowns in a home loss to the Minnesota Vikings. Goff was sacked 5 times. Sam Darnold, in an increasingly conservative game plan, was 14 of 26, 128 yards, sacked 4 times, no touchdowns. But the important thing was no interceptions. He did have 2 fumbles. Basically, Seattle's defense was overwhelming. And in my opinion, Kubiak and McDonald at some point made a decision, we're going to dial things back, protect the football, protect the lead. Even though Darnold fumbled twice, he didn't force anything to JSN other than the free play he got that was essentially a throwaway, and then the illegal contact on Murphy that I showed you. I know this video went on a long time. I took a long time to create this one because I wanted to get my thoughts out in as pristine a manner as possible. It's not that I didn't think JSN played well. He had one situation, the illegal contact that I talked about, where I felt like he didn't look like the same guy we've seen all year from an effort standpoint. Otherwise, do I worry long-term about him and Seattle's pass game? No. It'll just be an opportunity for Seattle to look at the film. They're way smarter than me or you or all of us put together. Look at the film. How can we use JSN to get other guys open, essentially use his gravity to help guys make plays like Barner, Shaheed, Horton, or even in the run game with Kenneth Walker III and Zach Charbonnet. If you guys enjoyed the video, please let me know in the comment section. Perhaps you think I'm being too much of a homer or it's a cop-out to not assign blame to JSN for the lack of production. I think all the other factors I talked about during the course of this video and in the summary at the end provide a whole lot more weight and evidence to why JSN was only able to get to 2 catches on 4 targets on the day. Finally, if you think other Seahawks fans would enjoy this film study look at how the Vikings were able to quiet and limit JSN's impact, it took until week 13 for an NFL team to do this. If you think other Seahawks fans would enjoy my explanation for it, as well as the plays I used to illustrate those points, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.